Good evening, folks, and welcome to this meeting of the Maidstone Joint Transportation Board. I'm Paul Cooper, I am the chairman. So we'll crack right on this evening. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Ash, who is here. Councillor Cooling, who is replaced by Councillor Ash, Mr. Chittenden, Mrs. Prendergast. Fine. Okay, apologies. It said Councillor Ash on the list of apologies, which was put in front of me. So Councillor Cooling, Councillor Chittenden, Mrs. Prendergast, and Mr. Webb. And there are others who aren't here, but I haven't received formal apologies. And substitutes, I am not aware of any substitutes. And Councillor Ash is here on his own steam, not Councillor Cooling's. Thank you. So urgent items, I have agreed to take the Maidstone Integrated Transport Package as an urgent item because the papers weren't submitted to Democratic Services on time. I'm looking around the room, nobody seems particularly disappointed that we have accepted that. So members, do we agree that we can take that as an urgent item? I think that is agreed. Thank you very much. And visiting members, I've got Councillor Khadkar and Councillor Thompson. If both of you would come to the front and just say which particular agenda item you wish to speak on, I'm sure in some cases I might notice. Councillor Khadkar.
Thank you, Chair. On the agenda number 14, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephen Thompson here as a visiting member. May I reserve my right, please, Mr. Chairman?
Of course you may. If I crack on without allowing you to speak and you wish to indicate, and I will make sure I come to you. Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures by members or officers this evening? I'll take that as none. Item number 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? No, there are no disclosures of lobbying. Number 7 is to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. There's absolutely no reason to go into part 2 this evening. So is that agreed that we'll take everything in open session, members? I think that is agreed. Thank you very much. Item number 8 is to consider the minutes of the meeting which was held on the 16th of October of last year. Does anyone have any comment on the accuracy of the minutes? Joy of joys. In that case, I move that we that I sign the minutes as an accurate reflection of the meeting. Is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. Item number 9 is presentation of petitions. I am not aware of early petitions this evening, so there aren't any. Likewise, item number 10 is question and answer session for local residents. I haven't been given any scripted answers, so I hope there are no questions, which there aren't. And likewise, item number 11 is questions from members to the chairman. Again, I don't believe there are any. So the next item is the work programme, members. Is there any comment on what is on the work programme? Councillor Mrs. Springett.
Thank you. In the minutes from the last meeting, I'm sorry, I can't remember which minute number it was, 86, the board requested that items based on the questions from local residents, coordination of roadwork closures and HGV weight and height limits and signage be added to the board's work programme, but I can't see anything on there about HGV or weight limits or signage, if that could be added. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can't recall what happened here. I do remember it being briefly mentioned at the agenda setting for this meeting, but I I think Councillor Clark might have. Fine. I thought Councillor Clark had a recollection, but I will make sure it gets put on the work programme. It might have been an oversight on my part at the agenda setting, so I apologise.
Quickly come back. It actually said coordination of roadwork closures. Well, we have got an item on that in this agenda, so I think probably it might have got missed because that's on this agenda, but they're separate bits. Thank you.
No, I have a horrible feeling it might be, you might be looking at the person responsible for that mess, and I am sorry, but I will make sure it gets added to the work programme. I saw Councillor Russell's hand.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to say it. Item 2 on the work programme, date of request 13th February 2024, and we're looking forward to receiving that on the 30th of July 2025. So we're doing really well with that item.
Couldn't agree with you more. I did see a couple of hands in this area. Councillor Clark.
Mine was actually on that point, but I think perhaps when we get to that item, we can talk about it and work out what we put down in that field.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on the work programme? Mrs. Parfitt-Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to find out the ANPR camera trial zones. Where are they? Would just be quite interesting to know where they are.
I think Councillor Clark might be able to answer.
Agenda setting, that was the two items that were requested were, and I think it has been mentioned in this forum before, were the town centre where cars go beyond the no entry signs and generally speed between lanes that they shouldn't be in, and the other one was to do with the yellow box junctions on the bridges gyratory. My understanding is, unless officers want to give a further update during the session, is that the town centre is the first one that they're looking to move forward with.
Could I just come back on that? Because I know that it was mooted that there was going to be ANPR on the Leeds Langley Road because due to HGVs, unsuitable vehicles going down that road, and I just wondered where that was. Thank you.
I don't recall that, but I'm not saying it didn't exist, but I will ask Jordan to make a note, and before we do get a report, send that on to the relevant officers. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yes, so when the report comes, it would be useful to have an update on the one at the Allington Hermitage Park bus gate as well, as part of that. There's an ANPR going in there with a bit of luck.
Thank you very much. If Jordan can.
I should have said, actually, sorry, that was one of the other one. There was that one, there was the town centre, and then there was the bridges gyratory, and actually that one, the bus gate, and also the town centre are the two that they're looking to move forward. I guess because it says March, we need to have that item updated as to when that report will be coming.
Thank you very much. I don't see any more indications, so we'll take that away. And obviously for the agenda setting for the next meeting of the municipal year, I'm sure all of these items we've waited a long time for will be forthcoming. On which note we move to, is that noted, members, the work programme? On that point, we move to item 13, the Maidstone Integrated Transport Package. I am somewhat disappointed that this evening Kent County Council have not sent an officer who is able to either present the report or take questions. I was entirely unaware of this until Jordan phoned me at lunchtime. Councillor Clark and I have previously written to Kent County Council to express, or to the Cabinet member to express our dismay that they don't send officers, they do not take this forum seriously. I am happy to do so again, but I fear that, I think we probably ought to do so again. Nevertheless, I fear that Kent County Council are taking us for mugs, quite frankly, which I think is rather disappointing. Councillor Clark.
I completely agree, Chairman. The one thing that I will say, we've really struggled to get any information at all from KCC about the substantial funding that was collected from CELEP and from developer contribution. The original proposal from this board was in August 2023, and every single meeting it gets bounced, and very often officers do not even attend. Now, the one thing I will say, and the one thing which KCC has to do, is to declare a budget or to sign off a budget for the year. And of course, anything money related has to be included in that budget. And by digging down deep into the Growth, Environment and Transport, GET, on the recently signed off KCC budget, I can say that there's an item 42, which is Maidstone's integrated transport strategy. And the description is improving transport links with various schemes in Maidstone. Now, on that item, we see that the planned spend is 14,079,000. So within ballpark of what we've been talking about for the last however many years. However, when we look at prior years spend, so spend today, and again, it's in the budget that was signed off, 13.943 has been spent today on Maidstone's integrated transport strategy. We already know that a chunk of that was taken out for Tunbridge and Malling to deliver the Cold Harbour roundabout. And when you consider the quantum of housing from Tunbridge and Malling that's gone into the Hermitage Lane area, I think it would have been quite reasonable to say that Cold Harbour roundabout could have been funded from developer contribution by Tunbridge and Malling without raiding our integrated transport package. So in the absence of any officers that can talk to this, I can only really give you an update from what I found on the budget, which is the planned spend 14.079 million, spend to date 13.943. This year, the planned spend is 136,000. Presumably that's going to be some lining at the wheat sheaf. There's going to be some timing sequencing along the network. So that looks very much like a wind down. And when we look at the forward plan for KCC, year one being the 136,000, which we're in currently, year two, plan spend £0. Year three, plan spend £0. Year four, plan spend £0. So we can see all the other items on the budget where we've got a projected spend going into the future, but I'm afraid on the information we've got to our hands today, which really is only the information from KCC's own budget, Maidstone's integrated transport strategy is pretty much spent, other than a bit of lining. What a dreadful situation, and what an amazing waste of time for every member in this room that's been here, and members of the public, in fact, that have been here year after year after year. It's an absolute travesty.
Thank you very much for that update, Councillor Clark. So what I'm going to do, I have seen some councillors indicating what I'm going to do first. Sean Carter is here. I will allow Sean to speak as a member of the public, and then I will, Councillor Thompson has reserved his right. If he does wish to comment, then I will go into general debate. But Sean, over to you when you're ready.
Got it. Right, good evening. I wonder if I'm wasting my time being here now, having heard that. My name is Sean Carter and I'm speaking on behalf of Lewes Parish Council. And it's fair to say that our residents are really concerned about the lack of progress on the 229 corridor, which is now 7 years since plans were first put forward to improve this busy junction. We spent £450,000 on Wheatsheaf Pub, and in theory, a lot of money was available to make major changes in the future. We've now reached the stage where the current suggestion from Highways is to do the minimum. Whether the 136,000 will even cover that is debatable. But in reality, minimum means virtually nothing, as it is accepted that the proposal will make little difference to the traffic flows. The residents of South Maidstone, probably all Maidstone, deserve better. And many parishioners ask, why does it take so long to do nothing while the value of the money available due to inflation brings less? Many people think this is public money completely wasted. And having heard tonight, who can argue that? We met with Highways recently and had what on the face of it was a fairly positive meeting. Excuse me. Some minor changes were agreed for the Swan Junction and at Plains Avenue. Regarding the Wheatsheaf, we put forward a plan which has just been implemented for a very similar junction in Sheffield. We believe this could be workable for the Wheatsheaf, and Highways have agreed, or did agree, to explore these suggestions and come back to us with a detailed report on their views as to whether this was feasible. We have done some work on this ourselves, and yes, it would be feasible, but would cost a lot of money. We also put forward an idea of easing the school traffic in Borton Lane and therefore reducing the volume in the Lewes Road Swan Junction at a peak time. We are in discussion with the local schools at the moment and are going to report back to Highways in due course. We would urge this committee to support us in our efforts to improve the Wheatsheaf junction and make public how much money put aside for this junction is still available. Brian has answered that this evening. I believe it is important that JTB is proactive and not a talking shop. But I'm afraid I'm very disappointed, and I believe we probably should all be here watching television rather than going through a process which gets us nowhere. We know that our residents, because of traffic volumes, are having to allow longer journey times and for some constant queues of traffic outside their houses. And this is only going to get worse unless action is taken. Lewes Parish Council is attempting to be proactive, and we believe our parishioners deserve far greater support from all parties than we've received over the last 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. And just to add some context, Sean and I met with Barry Stiff and Alex Beach on site on the Borton Lane Cribble Street Junction on the 28th of July 2021. I am not aware that I have seen a single updated plan since then. And that was already when the scheme was running approximately 4 years late. And that's just one of the junction schemes, and a number of them are running late. I will come back to you, Councillor Clark, but I want to try and make some progress. Councillor Thompson, you reserved your right. Did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Stephen Thompson, Boxley Downs ward member, including the village of Sandling on the 229 northbound to Chatham. Members will be aware that Kent County Council closed on Monday their brief consultation on the M2 A229 southbound to Running Horse roundabout consultation following the consultation in 2020. Substantial work was done on the Bluebell Hill end of that plan in 2020, indeed preceding my involvement in this place. I am aghast to report to this meeting that new plans were advanced as part of this proposal for the middle section between the Bluebell Hill interchange and the Running Horse roundabout adjacent to Sandling Village. I have just submitted on the village's behalf a response to the KCC survey in which 72 households in Sandling Village objected strongly to the proposals put forward. 3 persons expressed support to me on the doorstep for those proposals. This strength of objection was a surprise to the Kent County Councillor and the MP for this area. It seems to me, members, that this demonstrates a dire level of ignorance of the strength of feeling in neighbourhoods affected by what is the major infrastructure project in this area at this time. And I regret having to bring that to your attention this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Whilst that isn't strictly in the remit of the MITP, given that no one's here this evening to listen to elected members' concerns, nothing would surprise me when it comes to how highways are dealt with, unfortunately. I'm going to take Councillor Russell, then Councillor Springett, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Clark, and I'm sure more people will indicate at some point.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had a couple of points on the MITP. We used to, I know nothing's been updated for a while, but we used to have the junction in Lewes at the Swan was on here. And I know that that scheme sort of didn't happen, but it would be good to keep it as it was one of the original MITPs, that at least we could potentially look at doing something there. If we've literally lost the whole section about it, then no one's ever going to revisit that, are they? The other bit was on 2.3.4, where it said that they're looking again at the bit between the Wheatsheaf Junction and Armstrong Road because it's having an impact on the network capacity for vehicles travelling northbound towards Maidstone. I think that is quite correct, and I would just like to feedback. Good, keep looking at it, because I see that queue of traffic just going all the way back and it doesn't move, and that right-hand lane is just not being utilised properly or effectively. And then finally, the bit on 2.6 about the Sutton Road junction with Willington Street. Now that is a developer funded scheme, and this has been on here for a very long time. And again, it says it's not taken forward following public consultation due to loss of green space at the junction. I think that must just be the bit where the cherry trees are, but I see cars bumping round and driving on that every single morning to get round. And at the time, that probably was the right decision, but things have moved on, houses have been built and traffic volumes have increased massively. If that is a developer funded scheme, it would be good if we could feedback, could we have another look at that and see if something could be done there, rather than just say, you know, however many years ago we didn't do it, the end, especially if it is funded out of developer contributions. I'd just like to feed those points back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Russell. I will ensure they are fed back, but obviously it's very difficult when there isn't a representative here this evening. Councillor Springett.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on what Councillor Clark told us about the money. I mean, to say I'm staggered is just not enough, really. So they've spent the money from the MITP on the Cold Harbour Lane junction that isn't in Maidstone. So I think we need to ask some questions somewhere. Have KCC requested highways contributions from the recent developments in that area? And I'm thinking about the huge one that's just starting on the corner of the A20 and Hermitage Lane. There's a huge site just behind the Gypsy and Traveller site. It's enormous. Have KCC requested highways contributions? Because really, they should be requesting contributions from that to put back in the pot. So I'm just thinking, I think we need to do something. I don't think we should just let this go unnoticed. But I don't quite know what, but I just think we need to ask some questions somewhere or investigate whether KCC Highways did ask for some contributions. You know, it's all very well spending our bit of money on that, but then we would quite like a bit back, please. Thank you.
I quite agree. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points. Councillor Russell mentioned about sites coming off. I 100% agree. We've had no option but to just read a cut and paste that's come to us many times, we've not had any real disclosure about the funding. So we, as councillors, we can look at the money that's being spent. We have definitely raised multiple times about the issue that we did not want Maidstone's money spent in Tunbridge and Morling. We actually got Hall Road taken off, but it came back around. But I do think that we shouldn't have this sort of attrition where we take junction after junction after junction off of this scheme. And then let's say, for instance, in May, we may have new members from county completely unaware of where this even began. So I think we should keep this on radar until we've had a thorough review of what's going on with the money. And that's obviously absent at the moment. Now, we're here to scrutinise what's going on for our electorate. For all I know, there might be a section 106 at Willington Street that times out tomorrow. But I wouldn't know because that money has been transferred across to KCC under the old section 106, section 1278 agreements. And we haven't seen any full disclosure of what it is, when does it time out. The SELAP funds were going to time out in spring 2020. We got a short extension for the COVID pandemic. But what was the new date for that? We never heard it. We've never had it come back here. So I think that, and Councillor Spring, it brings up a great point. You know, at the end of the day, we've got this enormous quantum of housing in Tunbridge and Morling right on our doorstep, and yet the Fountain Junction, which was in this programme to begin with, was defunded and taken out. And it was one of the ones that was an attrition earlier on. This is why I'm saying we should bring everything back that we originally looked for and actually say what really happened to it. Because improvements at Tunbridge and Morling should be small fry compared to the housing that Tunbridge, sorry, the reconfiguration of the Fountain Junction should be small fry considering the housing that's on our doorstep from Tunbridge and Morling. I do agree with you. I think we should write to the county. We should write all of these points. We really just want to know what's going on with the money. When is it timing out? What's been spent? How much is left? And we need a full report because as elected members, what can we do when we just see a list of schemes? I don't really understand why we're here. If you can't review the money, I mean, what project manager would accept this as a report? I find it bizarre.
Thank you very much. I've got a few more speakers, but before I move on to other speakers, there have been a number of points raised, and I think Brian Clark raised a very good point that we should write to county so that hopefully we can get a written record. I'm not going to formally move that because I think we can be trusted to agree that at the end. I don't think it's a controversial subject to do such a thing. But so far, the points which are raised about, you know, what extra schemes, what schemes are moving forwards and what has been canned and why. I think the point that Councillor Mr. Spring has raised about whether, which I wrote down, have KCC requested highways contributions for the sites in Tunbridge and Morling. If anything else emerges, Jordan is going to make a note, and I will run through them before we move on from this item, because I think sending a writing to KCC and requesting a written response is the only means of getting a response. They don't send people to these meetings. We request things to go in reports and they don't produce the reports. It's a very tedious way of working, and it's not the way I wish to do business, but it seems to be the only way. So I'm going to go to Mr. Parswell next, then to Councillor Sweetman, then over to Mrs. Parfitt.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I find the whole thing extremely embarrassing, really. We've been told that the money's there. We tell our residents that money's coming forward, and then it doesn't appear. And we're made to look incompetent, bluntly. Coming back to the Cold Harbour roundabout, my understanding was it was a total cost of £7 million, including the purchase. So where's the rest of the money gone, even if we did pay for it ourselves? Coming back to the Fountain Lane junction, we were told it was going to cost £3 million before COVID, but we only had about £2.5 million in the bank. We're now being told in this report that they're looking around to see what 106 money is available. Well, where's it gone? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And no one's really mentioned the works which have started. They dug big holes in the ground and then stopped doing the works, which is exactly what's going on at Knot Cuts. And you know, it's yeah. Councillor Sweetman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, I just wanted to, I'll keep it short, express my disappointment that there is no KCC officers here, because I would have liked to have been able to ask to find out the progress, how we were progressing with the changes to the Fountain Lane junction. I've heard things, obviously they're changing it, they're not going to be doing the roundabouts now. There is a problem, especially travelling from Maidstone towards like the eastern direction, with the filter lane there, it backs up, and then the other side it backs up. So yeah, and it's stopping people getting into their roads. So it is a bit of a shame, because it would have been nice to have found out where we were in the plans, where we were going, and how long we expect for anything to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Parfitt, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back to what Councillor Clark was saying, and I think this is where there is sort of lack of clarity and disparity, because you talked about money that's been sent to KCC and that we don't know where it is. Yet a number of schemes in my division, the money is held by NBC, and NBC don't release the money until a scheme is laid out. And to be honest, I had to do quite a lot of digging and I found that we had quite a lot of money for my division that was just nicely sitting there, that nobody really seemed to be aware of until we started digging, because we wanted to fund a road scheme in, say, Staplehurst. So it just seems that the whole system is not consistent, and I think it's that lack of consistency and lack of clarity as to how it all works that sort of allows this sort of smokescreen of nobody quite knows what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, I think on that point, and it does stray a little bit beyond the MITP, but it is in the spirit of it. When I carried the portfolio for planning and infrastructure at this council, I was aware of quite a lot of money that Kent County Council hadn't requested, that couldn't be spent elsewhere, because developers aren't foolish. They're not going to adjust Section 106 agreements if they're not legally obliged to. They usually have a sunset clause, so often the money will go back to the developer. I made a decision in this very room once to forward fund a scheme. It's the scheme that was started, big holes been dug in the ground, concrete's been poured, and they've stopped. So I made a decision in this very room to start some forward funding for that. So there is money available for things, which is even more perplexing that KCC won't send their officers here to be questioned, because when we have the funds to push the projects forward, which the councillors want, which residents want, it is beyond frustrating, and clearly there is a disconnect, and the system is broken. I'm going to go back to Councillor Clark now. We'll come to you, Councillor Jeffrey.
So you're 100% right, and I have followed this up. So in my area, there's money available, and it won't be released until schemes are ready to get, and there's highways improvement plans and the like through the parish council. However, this happened so many years ago. I've spoken to the relevant officers that I'm working with on SEAL, and under SEAL, everything changed. And I think there was a statutory change that came from government to do with the fact that the collection of that money will only be released when a scheme is actually ready to be rolled out. But this came at the time of Section 106 and 278. And when these schemes were put forward and started to be progressed, where they were actually doing development, or they're doing development of plans, NBC moved that money across to KCC with a view that KCC would keep the spreadsheet, would keep up to date with everything. It was a different arrangement at the time this was moved forward than the current situation. So they are mindful of that. In fact, some of the lessons learned from this package is sort of informed on how to hold on to money until they absolutely know it's going to be sort of delivered. So you're 100% correct, but unfortunately, very sadly, a lot of money moved across, and NBC weren't monitoring it from that point. It was KCC that was left with the monitoring.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, 2 quick points. Councillor Cooper, you're obviously in the ruling group at KCC, and it would be useful to get a sense from you how you're holding your cabinet colleague to account for the mess we're talking about tonight, because clearly that's one thing that you could do personally, not through a letter as well. You could do it face to face. And my second point briefly is role on unitarisation.
In response to your second point, yes, I wish that we were moving to unitary authorities much quicker. And in response to answer your first question, so it's a matter of public record that I've signed letters and proposed motions here to Councillor Baker. I have spoken to him on a number of occasions about this matter. I have, along with Helen Grant, met with him and members of the public. We always get promises. We never get an unsatisfactory response from him. But when it actually comes to the work, nothing seems to happen. And we had very similar issue. It might not be me personally, but exactly the same issue dealing with KCC, particularly on highways and education matters, when we were formulating the local plan. And I'm fairly confident, Councillor Jeffrey, you will come against the same brick wall when you are formulating your next local plan review. So it's the responses we get are always satisfactory. I've never been dissatisfied with what I've been told, but what I'm told doesn't follow through to action. I'm afraid to say. Are there any other comments, councillors? Fine, thank you. I'm just going to speak with Jordan very briefly about what the content is. So if you could give me 30 seconds, apologies. Yeah, perfect. So I believe, and if I could be corrected, the thrust of the letter that we want to send is one, that we are very disappointed. Once again, we've been left without office of representation, and the notice that we've been given has been particularly poor. And then we want to know what schemes are moving forwards, schemes which have been removed from MITP and the rationale for that, and which have Section 106 or equivalent funds being requested from outside of the borough for development which has occurred along the specifically in Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, given that one of the schemes in the MITP is indeed in Tunbridge and Malling, albeit it's quite a good scheme now that it's completed. If only more of them were like that. I don't want to get a big lengthy list, but are members happy that that should be the thrust that would come signed from Councillor Clark? And
really the emphasis should be on the spend date, the current amount that's in the pot, any money that's at risk, either from SELEP or from Section 106, and really the full financial picture. I don't want to second guess what might have happened to it. I just want to know, what did we start off with? What have we still got? What's the spend today? And is there any risk on any of the money? From what I see on the agenda, from the county budget, I think that I might be asking for something that isn't there, but I still feel that we should ask it as a board, because we've never had any clarity on it.
Whether or not it's there is by the by. We want to. Well, it isn't by the by. It's quite relevant, but we want to have certainty. Are we? So I move that we put a letter signed by myself and the vice chairman. Are we agreed with that concept, members? Yes, thank you very much. This report is for noting. Is the report noted, members? It is noted. Thank you. We move on to the next agenda item, where Kent County Council have failed to send an officer representative, which is the A229 Lewes Road request for flashing amber lights. Now that sort of span out of a request for a speed camera. So Councillor Kadka, I understand that you wish to speak on this item, yep. So if you could come to the front and speak.
Thank you, Chairman. We campaign about this speed camera or the road speed control measure back in 2015-17, well before I was elected, and we followed 2023 and 2024 last year as well. We simply wanted from the residents to reinstate the camera. It was taken out in the first place. The response we have got so far is not quite what we wanted. And tonight, actually, I'm asking on behalf of the residents and myself, could you, as the chairman of the JTB, will be able to assure us that flashing amber light is as effective as a speed camera? If not, why are you just wasting money? Thank you.
I'll answer your question, but for context, I'm not a highways engineer, and I certainly have no qualifications in safety. However, I am a motorist, and I do drive at pace. And I look around the room, and there are other wild children in the room who drive at pace as well. When I see a speed camera, I'm aware that I'm in an area where there are speed cameras. I tend to slow down. I was coming around a patch of the M25 this evening to make sure I got here on time, and where I knew that there was a variable speed limit and cameras, I drove much more slowly. I don't intentionally speed past schools, but let's be honest, most people driving at 35, 36, 37 in a 30 zone don't believe that they're doing much harm. And when I'm behind the wheel, I don't, but I am aware that it's more dangerous. I couldn't give a toss about a flashing light, and I don't think many people do. A speed camera is much more effective than a flashing light. I'm not the biggest fan of speed cameras. I'm a libertarian. I believe in laissez-faire government. But there's a very good reason that speed cameras there, because children were killed on that very stretch of road. It was outside the school. It is still outside the school, albeit not the main entrance. And it's a dangerous stretch of road where people speed, they come busting around that corner, and there are regularly accidents. So although you didn't ask me, do I think there should be a speed camera there? I do think there should be a speed camera there. I think that we would be wasting our money on having flashing lights. Perhaps they are better than nothing, but I think there ought to be a speed camera there. And I can give you every assurance that if it were in my power, there would be a speed camera at that particular location. There might not be a speed camera at every other location where there's already one, but there will be one there, Councillor Kadka. And I think it is quite disappointing that we were told in this very chamber that modern technology now means that we can't put a speed camera there because outdated technology was better. I've been told some flim flam in my time, particularly in this chamber, but that was some of the best I've ever heard. So I can't give you the reassurances that you're seeking, I'm afraid, and I support you and Mr. Cannon and other members in your quest to ensure that road safety at that particularly dangerous spot is improved. Thank you. Councillor Thompson, I don't know if you... No, perfect. I'm going to come to Councillor Cannon first because Councillor Cannon put this request in. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. I will just, if you, I have had a message from Neil, and he is currently at the Canterbury JTB, and he apologises for the situation at our JTB. So there you go. But in terms of this item, obviously the camera was removed, and we were told that the technical problems on the road meant that we couldn't have a new one installed, which was a shame. So I've been talking to the highways team and trying to get more lights at this location, because I think, as we discussed in the JTB before, like if we're in a situation where we cannot get the camera that we want, then we do want some provision and protection, alerting drivers that there is a school there. And so I was in touch with Neil about this, and there is actually, I believe, an update to how this is written, because there is going to be some flashing lights installed. So that is going to come, and which is good news. And so there will be some alert to drivers coming down to the school that there is a school there, and they should be slowing down. And in terms of when that happens, I'm going to keep pushing the cabinet member at KCC to try and make sure that's installed as quickly as possible, because obviously, if we're not going to get our camera, we want to get those lights in place and start alerting drivers that there is a school there, because it's a serious issue. So that's glad to see that there is some progress, even if it isn't the ideal solution.
Thank you very much, Tom. And although I'm somewhat dismissive of flashing lights when compared to a speed camera, I do appreciate your endeavours to try to get something done, something better than nothing. And indeed, Councillor Baker is at the Canterbury JTB this evening. I assume that not every single officer from County Council's Highways Department are there with him, not least the officers responsible for Maidstone's MITP. I'll come to Councillor Clark next.
I was just wondering if Canterbury JTB are looking at any money that might be in Maidstone that they can look at grabbing. But seriously, on this point of this speed camera, I think it's difficult to know where to move on camera-wise, because the fact is that officer that arrived and explained to us that you just can't fit one, and we tried to get an understanding of the technical reason why they couldn't, and it was, well, the size is different. I mean, it's a school that I presume KCC owns the freehold. There's lots of frontage. It just seems unbelievable that we can, put a man on a moon, but we can't put a speed camera in a huge piece of KCC real estate. I wonder if perhaps the Democratic Services Officer could at least write to the officer and give us a written report as to what the process is, because I think that in the future there might be the opportunity for Section 106 to get some funding to do something like another speed camera, and at least if we know what the rules are, then we've got the potential of moving it or bringing it back. I just feel that we were left in the dark in the meeting. We've had this meeting cancelled and no update, and then we've had the postponed meeting and no update, and it just seems foolish that we're even talking about it without any context.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. Lucky old Canterbury, having the cabinet member. Wouldn't it be nice if he came here? I just wanted to quickly reflect on your comments about driving at 35, 35, 36 miles an hour. It's irresponsible, dangerous and illegal, and I don't think you should be. I think you should be giving a good example to the public, not calling yourself a wild child. I do, however, agree with you on the flashing amber lights. I think clearly the wrong solution. I think this place does need that speed camera. I'm really disappointed that we've failed to convince KCC of that. The average speeds that the report back in July, I think it was last year, talked about the average speed now being in excess of 30 miles an hour. More than half of cars are driving illegally down that stretch of the road. I walked down there about a week ago, and it is horrible to walk down. And indeed, I cycled along another stretch of road today with cars hammering past me, and it is scary and dangerous. It's quite clear KCC do have a problem with Maidstone for all of the stuff, all the reasons we've learnt, and we have to slow that traffic down. It is beyond a joke, particularly on that stretch, and I think I'm sort of at a loss what to do next, given the intransigence of KCC on this. what do we do? Go and block the road? I'm happy to go and sit in a road if anyone would like to join me, but we have to do something.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jeffrey. You are one of the least people that I'm ever likely to take lessons in morality from. I believe that members of the public expect honesty from us and integrity. And indeed, you highlighted yourself that most people will drive over the speed limit. And if I look around here, we might not all wish to put that as a matter of public record, but I'm sure we have. And I am delighted that I've been honest with the public this evening. Nevertheless, I fully accept your points relating to slowing traffic down, and you know, and I admitted myself that whilst you're driving a car, you might not believe that 36 is more dangerous than 30, but you're much more likely to cause an accident. You're much more likely to seriously injure someone. Councillor Mrs. Springett.
Thank you, Chair. When I read this report, it just, I mean, I'm delighted to hear you've got permission for the flashing lights, because you seem to have managed to work your way around all the rules. So 10 out of 10, because this is a classic. The answer is no. What was the question? You know, the number of times this Department for Transport Traffic Signs manual is used to say, oh, no, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. You know, I've been trying to get in Roundwell a build out. Oh, no, you can't have the build out because it's too close to the 30-mile-an-hour limit. And oh, no, you can't have it because you haven't got the sight line. So I said, well, what about a pole for a camera? No, that's too close to the 30-mile-an-hour limit. So I said, well, there's children crossing from a new development. So could we have children crossing sign? No, it's not on a regular route to school. So I said, but we've got old people. Oh, you've got old people. You've got an old person's home. We can give you a sign that says old people crossing. And that is the best I've managed to achieve within the rules of this blasted Department for Transport Traffic Signs manual that seems to rule the world, and it seems to prevent the installation of safety measures because it's not safe. So because it's not safe to put the safety measure in, there's a worse safety situation for the people crossing the road. I know there's nothing you can do about that. I just find it so frustrating that, oh no, you can't, it's not safe, it's not approved there. But they leave a worse situation because there's no way around the rules. And I would like a big bonfire of that manual personally, but I know we can't do anything about it, but well done if you've at least got the flashing lights. That's all I can say. That's a major achievement.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you said speed cameras very effective. Far more effective are bodies in fluorescent yellow jackets, speed watch teams. We have them operating at the moment in Bearsted, and you see traffic going along the A20. They're allowed to do 30. They're doing 18, 19, 20. They could go 10 miles an hour faster, but they all slow down. The team are very disappointed because they don't catch anybody. They did catch them when they stood outside just east of the Tesco garage, because they were still doing 40, 50 coming into Bearsted, and they hadn't slowed down sufficiently. On Ware Street recently, where we're always getting residents saying, speeding, 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 do something. Not a single motorist was exceeding 30 miles an hour, which they're entitled to do. But it is the fluorescent yellow jacket, and it has been put forward by my colleague over there. We could buy some mannequins, we could put the fluorescent yellow jacket on them, and then just stick them in the side of the road, and they'll suddenly think, oh, police. And then they realise it wasn't a policeman, but they've slowed down. Thank you.
Thank you. Case in point, actually, this evening on Hoppers Lane, there was a local speedwatch team out, and the traffic was, in Detling, sorry, not in Bearsted, but I drove down Hoppers Lane, and certainly the traffic that was going down there was coming down much below 30 miles an hour, shall we say. Councillor Hickson.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Callan, you said that you spoke to the cabinet member, and you've got assurances now, given what Councillor Cooper said about nice words. What sort of what assurances have you got, and what timeframes are we looking at with this?
What my understanding is, it's gone now to officers for drawing up the lights. So it's that level of assurances. So it's gone from cabinet to officers for implementation.
Thank you very much. Nobody else has indicated to speak, so that report was for noting. I assume the report is noted.
Did we take my the letter from the Democratic officer to the officer at KCC about the specification for why? I prefer not to get a link from her to the process. I'd like to see how it was interpreted in this case, so we can understand why it fell.
Of course, and I'm very sorry I missed that. I'll make sure that that is minuted and that that is requested. On why we can't have, it's precisely why we can't have these speed cameras. So I assume that report is noted, members. Noted. Thank you very much. Next is the street work progress update, and I am pleased actually that Barbara Westmacott is here. All I would say, members, please, Barbara is here this evening, and it's likely to be in her own time, and it certainly isn't Barbara's fault that other officers were unable to attend. And we very much do appreciate you being here, and I'm sorry that we kept you waiting, Barbara, but I have members of the public that I wanted to invite first. So I will hand over to you. Hand over to you.
Good evening, everybody. I am here to talk you through a report that was requested by yourselves, I understand, in relation to road closures. I'm not sure how much opportunity you've all had to read through it. I don't intend to read it word for word, but I do intend to draw your attention to some of the points that are on there. This was prompted by a request from the ETCC, the Environmental and Transport, a committee at the ETCC, I can't remember the full name of it, I'm afraid, and they were concerned around the rise in the number of road closures and the compliance of those closures in relation to how long they were spending in place, were they required, etc. So two areas of the county, Maidstone being one and Ashford being the other, undertook an urgent review of the emergency road closures within the district. The collected data was reviewed to determine, as I said, the compliance and the need for the closure, including the health and safety compliance. So that relates to the signs, that relates to the barriers, whether access is maintained for residents and emergency vehicles. The duration of the work and the potential on the local community. The outcome of that was that we actually recruited 4 members of staff, 1 for each of the streetworks teams in the county. We are the West Central team and cover Maidstone, Tunbridge Morning and Tunbridge Wells. So our inspector is up to speed and is fully functioning. And we're more than happy to receive any emails from anybody to draw our attention to something that they have a concern about. Streetworks sit within highways under the operations side under Andrew Loosemore, and we deal a lot with Neil Baker, who I understand can't be with us because he's in Canterbury. The main piece of legislation that we deal with is the new Roads and Streetworks Act. However, there are other pieces of legislation that we do deal with, including the Traffic Management Act and road closures themselves, and anything requiring speed limits or lane closures where a diversion is required, or the closure of a bus lane or cycle lane is dealt with under the Traffic Regulation Act. We are lucky in the county that we also run a permit scheme, and 5% of our network has a lane rental scheme on it. That is the highest levels, the most disruptive roads, and there is significant fees up to £2,000 a day to close one of our Kent Lane rental routes. So obviously we are challenging people and asking them to find alternative, less disruptive ways to deliver their works. We need to recognise that under the new Roads and Streetworks Act, statutory undertakers, that includes any of the utilities and our own works, have a right to repair, maintain, install, etc., any equipment within the highway, and we are charged as a team to reduce disruption, but we cannot say no. So we can say not then, we can say not using that traffic management, but we can't say no legislatively. Moving on, the works promoters remain responsible for any works throughout. Although we grant the permits, it is their works and not ours. Although we're happy to liaise with utilities, it remains their works. Regular performance meetings are held with all of the standard UK Power Networks, South East Water, Southern Water. So the big hitters, the people that cause the most amount of works to be done on the network. We have regular performance meetings with them, and we drive compliance by bringing issues in relation to roadworks that haven't been very well communicated to people, or that haven't been done very well. So that's whether they were done unsafely, or they weren't given the priority that they needed in order to reduce the durations. One of the big tools that we use to undertake the network management duty that we have is One Network. Now, some of you may have heard of that. It's a website that you can go on and find out what roadworks are going on where, any of the roads in the county, any of the roads in the country, and find out what the issue is going on. If people do stay on the highway after their permitted time, there is something called Section 74, which is unauthorised occupation of the highway, and that also draws a fine. But we do need to be reasonable about it. Obviously, some signs stacked up on the side of the road is not going to cause the level of disruption that a full road closure and diversion setup is going to. So that's on a sliding scale. Okay. Between April and September last year, there were 4,461 emergency closures in the county, and they amounted to over 13,000 days. That's a lot of days. So the idea of the road closure inspectors is that they are our first port of call. When we are aware of a road closure, we will send them out. They're our first responders, if you like. They go out and they identify whether the closure is necessary, how long is it going to last, and we're on top of them to make sure that they are sticking to their durations and trying to keep disruption to a minimum at all times. Although we don't decide when a road needs to be closed by an outside person, the utilities company are bound, any of the responsible authorities are bound by what is called the Red Book. That is a set of legalities that they must adhere to. Otherwise, we can ask them to leave the highway. And we do on occasions. We try not to, because we try to educate rather than remove. But if necessary, we will ask them to remove themselves for the safety of the public or for their gains. The next steps for us to help drive compliance within the county is to make sure that we are on the working group that is being set up by Seahawk, and they are a group that are both utilities and highway authorities, to look at how works are done and whether there are ways that we can make them faster, better, safer. Also, I understand that David Roby has put together a report to go to central government to look at changing some of the legislation to give us more power than we currently have to challenge the utilities, especially on emergencies, because emergencies, there isn't really too many definitions that we can seize upon to really challenge them as to whether it is an emergency or not, because they can start works and not tell us for 2 working hours. So if they start at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, we actually don't have to be notified until 10 a.m. on Monday morning. And that's not a situation that we understand communities really want to be set against. So we will be looking into that, and we'll be forcing the hand as much as we can. That really is the essence of the report. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if people have them.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I've seen loads of hands suddenly shoot up, so
Awesome.
you might regret that. But I will. If people could leave their hands up till I point at you, because I not that it's polite to point, but I will take your details down. But first, I've got Councillor Springett.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for this report. It's quite helpful to have this information all printed out when we're asked questions by residents. So actually, it's really good. So thank you very much. A couple of questions for you. Is it your team that issued the road closure notices that I get? I get lots of notices saying streetworks team. Now,
yes.
Can they be
guilty as charged? Sorry.
Could there's a couple of issues I've got with these. Sometimes the diversions are not very good, and in the past I've seen spurious roads added into a diversion route that are nowhere near the area. So obviously the people doing them don't know the area very well. So it would be helpful if perhaps they contacted us borough ward members just to say, is this a sensible diversion? Because I've seen completely odd roads thrown into that are nowhere near. And coming on from that, are the notices sort of proofread before they go out? The example I will cite happened today. I got a notice that said that I think it's April, they're going to shut the A20 in Hollingbourne for 18 days. The road will be closed. And then about 20 minutes later, I got, oh, sorry, better recall that one. And it was recalled. And then out came, there will be a speed limit on this section of.
There was a mistake. There was a mistake, and we can only apologise for that. There was a mistake today, and it was rectified as fast as possible.
Thankfully,
it was supposed to be proofread.
Yeah. I was going to say, my polite request is, could we possibly ask for them to be proofread just before they go out? Because I'd sent it on, and then I had to send on don't send that note out, and just managed to stop it in time. And the second thing is, I did mention it at the recent parish forum that Highways ran that was very, very good, in that we could really do with some better, more up-to-date signage. The old road closed ahead gives you so little information because it doesn't tell you where a road is closed, and your destination might be this side of the road closure. If we could just have road closed ahead at junction with Brown Street or something, if there was a way of having a slightly bit more information. That's why people ignore road closure signs, because they think, well, I don't know where it is, and I might be wanting to go to somewhere this side of the road closure. So if I could just give some feedback, if it was possible to do even if it's a sticker that goes on the bottom of the sign that says at this junction or at this point, it would be really helpful. Is it the road I'm on, or is it a side road that's closed? Because that also happens.
Yeah.
So that's more of a feedback. If that could be done, I think it would encourage motorists to adhere to the signs rather than ignore them.
It is already on our radar, and was discussed at a meeting that we had with the councillors for Fant yesterday. When a road closure is planned, that sort of bespoke signage absolutely forms part of what we ask them to do. But as an emergency, it's a little bit more difficult. We used to have 2 signs: road ahead closed, which indicated that a road that you were going to come across as you travel down would be closed, so you drive past the end of a closed road. And road closed ahead was the road you were driving on, but for some reason in the new red book, one of those signs was actually removed. Personally, I think one of the things that we're going to be doing in relation to this working group is pushing for that reintroduction of that other sign, so that you know immediately whether it's the road you're on or a side road off, and then you can that helps with your journey. But I agree, we could do with a little bit more information, because the road could be 5 miles long and you're driving 4.5 miles of it before you hit the closure. So I agree, and absolutely that's already on our radar, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Mr. Passmore next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Barbara.
Good evening.
We had a very successful meeting. I think it was on Monday. Councillor Tom Cannon was with us, and Kimmy Millam and Paul Harper, focusing specifically on the issues of road closures in Fant, where the issue of road closures is particularly acute. Sorry, is it very echoey, is it? Sorry. How do I turn it down? Sit back a bit. Okay, fine. Sorry, I do apologise. I'm a bit deaf. So yeah, we had a very successful meeting, and we discussed a number of issues around Fant. Fant is particularly prone, as we know, to potholes. It's got a very old infrastructure which is not standing up, and there's huge pressure on the roads. Plus, the one-way streets make it even worse. So it was a very successful meeting. The main focus, I think, at the end of the meeting was on communication. We can't stop these emergency closures, but what we can do is we can actually prepare ourselves better, so that when they happen, we can move quicker. We talked about VMS, the visual messaging systems around the place, so that they can at least draw people's attention to particular locations where the road closures are, so people know where they can get to. We talked about communication with the schools. We've got a particular issue in Fant with Bower Grove. Some of you may know over 100 taxis arrive in Bower Grove and leave Bower Grove every day, and communicating with the head teachers, making sure they know what's going on, and obviously dealing with that incredibly difficult topic of that 2 hours when the utilities can be digging up the roads before actually Barbara and the team know what's going on. And she did say it's quite useful if we're picking it up on Facebook, we actually communicate it to the West Central team. So don't send it to an individual officer, send it to West Central. That's the email which is being monitored the whole time. So those are just some of the issues, and it was a very productive meeting. We were given a copy of the Red Book as well to have a look at and try to understand. But as I say, certainly for Fant, we do feel a bit more confident that we can deal with those issues in that area more effectively. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've now got Councillor Russell, followed by Councillor Clark and Councillor Hickson. There were and Councillor Sams. So, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Barbara, for this report. I think, like Councillor Springett said, it's really detailed and actually provides a lot of good information that I don't think I've had before. For when you mentioned the 4 road closure inspectors, and then yes. Councillor Passmore just mentioned the West Central email. It was just a quick question. Who contacts those people? Can we contact them? And how do we do that? I'm not sure, unless I missed it. It says how we can do that.
The best route to contact anybody within my team in relation to any roadworks issues is to use the Streetworks West Central at kent.gov.uk email address. Streetworks West Central is all one word.
Thank you.
Because that is covered all the time in relation to office hours. There are at least 3 people that are looking and monitoring that on a daily basis.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clark next.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for this report, this comprehensive report. I have been involved in road closures before, actually setting them up, And I did one for a charity, and kindly KCC waived the license for the closure. The one thing I would say, just from a sort of pragmatic view, we went to a company called A-Plant to do our design for the road closure, and it was very generously, they also did that for free. But unfortunately, they would normally help us with the signage as well, but it was at a time when there was a lot going on, as there often is. So what we did, we got the design and we actually bought our own signs to do the road closure. We reviewed it ourselves because it was myself and Paul Wilby, who's also a borough councillor and parish chairman. So we did sort of give our feedback on what the sign should say because of our knowledge of the area. But I'm just thinking, if you do come up with recommendations for what the terminology should be about road ahead closed or side road closed, it would be worth maybe having some sort of guide that you can give to those institutions that are authorised to do it. I think that that would be well received, and certainly I had no complaints about A-Plant. I thought they were absolutely, it was quite remarkable when they sent us this massive great pile of paper with all these different twists and turns, and me and Paul had to go out with the sandbags to sort of put them in place. But it is, unless you do it, you really don't understand just how many twists and turns there are that you have to make people aware of. So that's really just a bit of feedback on getting the message out for clarity. Recently, we had a road closure at the Swan Junction. It was on a Friday night, sort of towards into Saturday, and it really did cause chaos because they had to put it's a fully traffic light operated junction, and they had to put temporary lights on the A229 and all around. When I spoke to the water company that was doing the works, they basically opened up the road. They put everything in place, caused a lot of challenges to the A229, and they were giving me updates. And finally, they said, "Oh, we've actually got to this point where we've done a test for chlorine, and there is no chlorine in the water. So we think this is just because of heavy rain, recent heavy rain." Now, that was a lot of churn locally, and it would have been it would have been great if there could have been a process, and you may even tell me that there was a process and it was breached. But given that there was evidence of water for the work to be contracted initially, it should almost be that there's a test for chlorine as the first thing that happens before anyone sort of jumps on a road closure. I've got one last point, and it's a question really. I was at a site today, and there's a utility that's put a fibre into this estate in the south of Maidstone, and of course you have to allow them to do that. But when you look at the sort of trajectory, there's really a substantial level of footpath that's been you can see the sort of the point at which they've sort of started at one point, went right the way across the estate, across the footpath. It's all tarmac, but they got to this point where there was a grass verge. There were 2 trees that have recently been taken out by KCC recently because they were under stress, and that would have been a replanting site, but it was this verge on a corner, and where they could have, considering how many sort of hundreds of meters of tarmac they'd laid to that point, they could have just went alongside of this verge and carried on, but they chose to go into the verge and out the other side, and KCC are now saying that they can't replant the trees because the utility company laid fibre across the verge. And I just wonder, do we have any way of telling them, you're putting in, let's say, 150 meters of tarmac, please don't go into that verge just to save yourself 5 meters and stop us from planting a tree?
Absolutely, I would agree with you completely from the information that you've given me. However, I wouldn't like to comment as to how much plant there already is in that footway that has meant that their only route is through that verge. If you want me to look at both of these in detail and get you full information in relation to what happened on these 2 scenarios, I'm more than happy to do that. If you can offline give me a few more details as to the dates of when the works for the Swan Junction took place, and also the roads. You mentioned fibre south of Maidstone, but the road specifically that you're concerned about, and I will get you a full brief.
That's great. I'll take that offline with you. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hickson.
Good evening, Barbara, and
Hello.
thank you for the report. I've got a query and then an observation. So my query, strangely enough, relates to something that Councillor Clark was just talking about. When it comes to a utility company, for example, digging up the road, obviously the road is owned by us, by the public. They might own the pipes underneath and things like that. Is there some way of kind of inspecting that or making sure that they actually put everything back the way that it was in the first place? Is there not a duty for them to be able to put it back as it was, at least in as good a state as it was before they started? Because that's not theirs. The bit that they're messing up isn't actually theirs. So there must be some way that we can do that. That's my query, first of all.
Would you like me to answer that, or do you want to make your observation and then I'll?
Okay, yeah, no, if you could answer that and then I'll make the observation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Under the new Roads and Street Works Act that I referred to earlier on, we inspect 3 times for every set of works. They are generated randomly. We don't inspect 3 times for every set of works. We sample the amount of works that go on. We inspect at the point of works going on, so when the physical signs and everything are out. Within 6 months of the permanent reinstatement, and then there is a guarantee period of 2 years, and we inspect a 3rd time within the last 3 months of the guarantee period. And if at any point it is not up to the standard that we expect, we issue a defect notice and they are expected to come back and put it right. There is a document called the Specification for Reinstatement in the Highway, and that is a legal document that defines what we expect for them to put back to maintain a safe highway. And all statutory undertakers are bound by it. So there are ways, and if you are finding that there is particular areas that you have concerns, pop them over to us on the email address I talked about earlier on, and we will go out and have a look, and if necessary, bring them back.
Okay, thank you very much. And the observation is a couple of weeks ago on Farley Hill, we had a partial road closure, and the real issue was the timing of the lights. So you had traffic backing up for miles in one direction because from a little side road was given equal amount of time to get out. So is there a way that can be looked at?
Absolutely, there are conditions that we place onto the permits, including manual control of the traffic lights. So that it is our expectation that they will have someone on site to manage the traffic, and it's not just the very busy roads that we do that on. The Farley Hill, I'm pretty sure we would have asked to have manual control and a spotter, because there is the issue with the river and the railway down there, of course. So we would have asked them to set that up to best run the junctions, and potentially they may have got a breach of permit conditions FPN. We would have hit them for that. So yes, there are ways, and we are on it as much as we can. We only have a road closure inspector and 1 inspector for each borough from a street works perspective, so they can't be everywhere at once. But if we know where the pinch points are, then we can prioritise those for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sams.
Thank you, Barbara. It's been really informative and educational, what you've said so far tonight. I don't want to repeat what everyone else says, but can I ask about 2 or 3 things? First of all, the cumulative effect of road closures, particularly on rural roads, and its frustration for residents and parish councils, which often leads to the degradation of the verges and the passing places, so that the chaos that's caused by a closure means that the highway further down the road is just completely mullered by vehicles try to pass and the verges are just completely destroyed. So just like you to take that on board when the next closures happen and diversions take place. Secondly, the non-displayment of the permit sign. Well, I have been by some street works where you can't find a permit sign anywhere. So I now know what to do. I can now contact Street Work Central, can't I? And take a photograph. Yes. Right, that's the other thing. And the other thing we've encountered is the how do we stop the unscrupulous digging up of the highway by people? And in one case in Harwich, they just connected to a water pipe, and they did it over a weekend, and there's sweet nothing we could do about it. It happened and gone. But they had vehicles which indicated it was a proper highways vehicle. The job was being done. They had all the plant machinery. It was just done, closed, and connected and gone. So I suppose those things happen, but how can we ensure that we can report that to you as quickly as possible and get some action on that?
Without wishing to repeat myself, pop it over to us on that email address. We do have a highways enforcement team, and the evidence that you're talking about that you'd witnessed and you'd seen the vehicles, you knew how they were, you knew where they were and when they were there. That evidence is enough for us to pursue them for unauthorised occupation of the highway.
Right. So, and finally, just coming back from that, I think that you've been on since about 7:30. So thanks for coming along. But now, what I will do is I'll take that back to our parish councillors and say, go on the JTB and just look from 7:30 onwards if you want to actually get something relevant and informative to take back to our parish councils and our communities. That's been really, really good. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now, members, I didn't invite Councillor Thompson to speak at the beginning of the item, which was my omission. So I will invite you to speak now. What you mustn't do is take part in the debate, although now that you've heard things, that would be remarkably difficult. So over to you.
I am very grateful for your latitude, Mr. Chairman. I very much appreciated. So I think Jen Stevens in our Waste Management Department has already been beatified and is on her way to sainthood. Barbara, you're sticking at this task, knowing the brickbats that are sent your way. You have our admiration, may I say. To move on, it was interesting to see photographs of the cabinet member who I believe is in Canterbury this evening, not pointing at potholes but staring at a camera on with the Kent Messenger on the 12th of March saying it's not me, drawing attention to the 1/3 of road closures that are emergencies. There was much less comment on the 2/3 that were not emergencies. And Barbara, in all frankness, and with appreciation to you and your colleagues, it would be good to hear more sharing of the management processes of what mitigations you are able to bring about, what negotiations it is possible to bring, what persuasion it is possible to bring to make roadworks less of a nuisance, and for council members to have a sense of agency in that process. I have, in my short time as a councillor, had a couple of key opportunities to be involved in some roundtable conversations. One of them was when gas mains, I think, were being fixed in Leeds, or was it water? I forget which. Very significant works that were done there. It helped to know which things could be done and which things could not be, and it helped members to be able to communicate with residents to say you are being listened to. There is a sense of engagement that was really helpful, and we can see from your integrity and your engagement this evening, if I may say, how very helpful that is. Mr. Chairman, my colleague remarked earlier on the power of persuading one's political friends. And I'm minded to point out that whether or not we proceed quickly to a unitary authority or not, it seems that the 2004 Traffic Management Act was a very long time ago. And I believe in the papers of this evening, it is pointed out that there is a need for a change to government legislation to empower Mr. Baker and officers to be able to bring meaningful level levels of financial inducement, fines or whatever it is we want to call them, to the utilities companies, that piece of work needs to be expedited at speed and need not to be a political issue. So if we may please ask for that work to be done at pace and regardless of other political processes, I think that'd be really helpful. Thank you very much indeed for hearing me at this time.
Thank you very much. Next on my list is Councillor Ash, and I'll come to Mrs. Parfitt.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to emphasise what Councillor Springett said earlier on, road ahead closed is not acceptable. That is totally unacceptable. Local people will know where they can go and where they can't. A hell of a lot of people these days are delivering. There's delivery vans all over the place. No, it wasn't recent, about a year ago, had a meeting at Lenham Community Centre, and I got down as far as Lenham Square, road ahead closed. I decided to ignore it. Good job I did, because I was able to access the community centre, because the road ahead close was further on from the community centre. The sign should have said road ahead closed after the community centre. That is also the site of a medical centre. So there's people wanting to get to a medical centre, you know, and you should be able to do it. There must be printing facilities where you can quickly print off something extra and put it on a sign and tell people. Because as I said, a lot of people are delivering. There's vans all over the place delivering and delivering. They don't know the area, really, and they need to know. Local people will know where that road was closed, but they don't. But our problems in Kent are not alone. It just so happens last Friday in the metro, 40 mile detour. Drivers, people being driven crazy. Where was this? Shropshire. So we're not alone. And I wonder if there are any counties in the country where they've really got everything working perfectly. Are there any counties you could learn from or not? Are they all the same?
Unfortunately, we all deal with the same legislation and the same falling down in such legislation. So I would think that unfortunately you wouldn't find a county that has no problems in that respect. But we do talk to other counties to practice and learn from other people and to drive best practice across the country. So we don't work as a silo, but we are bound, unfortunately, by the legislation that we are now challenging with central government.
Thank you. And final speaker, Mrs. Parfitt.
Yes, I just really wanted to reiterate that point that the Deputy Cabinet Member and the KCC team are at Westminster tomorrow speaking to the Cabinet Select Committee. So it is happening. You said, can we push it? I think tomorrow is probably as soon as we can perhaps hope for them to be doing that. So let's wish them all the luck in dealing with the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Barbara, thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm sorry that we had to make you wait. Members, that report was noting. I assume it is noted. Perfect. And then the final item on the agenda is for information only, members, and that's the Maidstone Highway Works Programme. Councillor Ross, I will let you speak, but I hope this is strategic and not too parochial. Over to you.
Oh, yes. It is referring to item 40. Ever since Councillor Webb and I got elected, this has been a real issue, this zebra crossing at Nettlestead, and he's put a lot of the members' grants towards it. We've managed to get it upgraded to the Belisha beacons, but similar to the thing that Councillor Cannon was working on, the problem that we have with this crossing is it is the speed variations, but also what happens is the first car stops for the pedestrian crossing. What has been happening recently is the second car hits the first car, shunting it into the zebra crossing. And there's been a couple of very bad near misses. Now, I don't often get exercised about stuff, but somebody is going to get seriously injured or will die at this crossing. I'm working with the parish council to get a petition together for KCC, but I just saw the route that Councillor Cannon took with the amber beacons, and I just wondered, could I request a report come back to this committee as to whether we could upgrade this crossing to a pelican crossing, because I just think it's so important that we get the traffic stopped while the people are trying to use that crossing. And also on one side of the road is all of the houses, and on the other side of the road is the preschool. So the people that are using this crossing are children twice a day.
Thank you. I must admit the point on Lewes Road was obviously not a massively strategic issue, but it did come out of a former issue. We generally try to ensure that anything that comes to this committee is strategic rather than single issue. I'm not trying to disrespect, because I actually think it's a very important point. However, it can be added to the work program, and it would essentially be a matter for the new for the leadership in the new municipal year. Personally, I wouldn't normally put something like that on an agenda, but I do think it is very important that you have raised it. So I'm sorry that my answer might not be quite